Well. It's Tuesday, October 8th, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm Bob Harris. This is the Audible YouTube channel. It's time to go on the hot seat. FirstFootballGuys.com. That's your website. Appreciate you joining me here every Tuesday at this very time. Also, Saturdays at 11 a.m. for the Ask Me Anything live streams. Always have a good time there. Hit the subscribe button, the notification bell. Like us, don't like us. We'll be fine either way. We're grown ups. We can take it. Constructive criticism, always welcome. Appreciate your comments in the chat as well. Always eager to get that. And today I put my friend Ike and Dukeway on the hot seat. We're going to talk free agency and other news of the day. You know Ike from DD Fantasy Football. Used to be Destination Devi. They have rebranded, and that seems like a smart move. The hat looks very good. You also hear him Off the Line Fantasy Football podcast with Eugene O'Menihue, who will be on the show at some point here one of these days. Ike, how you doing?
Pretty good. Excited to talk ball. Appreciate you having me back on. It's been a while. It's been about a couple months.
Yeah, it was like pre-draft was last time we were able to chop it up. So this will be a good time. So like, I don't know, anything happened today that catch your attention?
Oh, just the Jets firing Robert Saleh. Nothing major though, right? Nothing major.
So do we have hot takes on this, or just the obvious?
I mean, the obvious thing is Aaron Rodgers actually fired him, and Robert Saleh was the fall guy. I mean, that's the bottom line here. It really is that simple. You can't blame Aaron Rodgers for the Jets' offensive woes, right? You can't do that. You got to blame the coach, right? You have to go back to the head coach. That's what they always do. The Jets' offense was only 22nd in EPA. And 23rd in DVOA. I mean, they've only been the worst offense in the league during Robert Saleh's time in New York.
Is that Robert Saleh's fault?
I mean, it's a lot of people's fault, but I think moreover it's ownership's fault for the most part, and they haven't been able to get the quarterback right for many years there. So it's bad all around. I mean, Robert Saleh's calling card is obviously defense. And they've been really, really good in defense. They were first in points per drive, first in EPA per play, third in success rate. Like, their defense is really good. So, but the offense just wasn't putting up points, and you got to fire somebody. And the head coach is the one that's going to get fired, unfortunately.
So some of the stories that are floating around since then were that a little talk that maybe Saleh was going to take some of the play calling, the game day play calling duties away from Aaron Rodgers' favorite guy, Nathaniel Hackett, give it to Todd Downing. So as you look at the Jets, I watch the Jets, and I think the biggest problem for me is give the ball to Breece Hall more. That would be one big problem, probably the biggest problem. But also the offensive line seems to be an issue. They aren't blocking well. They kind of invested in some elder statesmen, right? They did invest in the draft as well. What do you think what kind of adjustments would Ike and Dukeway be making were he running this offense?
Just be more dynamic. Have more pre-snap motion, and just kind of get the ball in your best player's hands. I mean, that's the bottom line. Get the ball in Breece Hall's hands in space. Target Garrett Wilson more, and try to take some more shots down the field with Mike Williams, who's seems to be ramping up from coming back from his ACL injury. But they just need to switch it up on offense and just be a little bit more dynamic and just do a lot of motion, things like that, play action, things of that nature.
Yeah, I would like to remind the Saints how good that worked their first two games, but that's another story. But it's true, right? Like, that's like one of the keys to successful offenses is moving around pre-snap and keeping defenses off balance. Maybe have your own players running at full speed against defenders that are flat-footed and waiting for them. So a lot to be said for that. Also, though, a little talk. Maybe you mentioned Aaron Rodgers fired the on-field general manager. Can he convince the off-field general manager Joe Douglas that Davante Adams is a necessary piece?
I mean, that's been the speculation, right? I mean, that's been the speculation there. Over the next week, maybe 2 weeks, we should probably see that situation get resolved, because the Raiders, they want to move pretty fast. They want to move Davante Adams as quickly as possible. Right. So I see something getting done over the next week, 2 weeks tops. But just real quick, one note about the Jets offense that I didn't even that I just discovered and just stumbled upon. Through week 5, they have the same amount of points through week 5 as they did last year. So 93 points through week 5 of last year. So and 93 points through week 5 this year. So the more
So,
things change, the more things stay the same.
so when you watch this offense, what do you see? What is Aaron Rodgers to you? What has he, like, I've heard the varying opinions. We've had discussions of football guys in our little online chats, so, that some people think he's washed. I think it's probably too soon to make that call, but clearly the arm strength, is like, at some point you've got to start compensating for that and your inability to move around like you once did. How do you see him managing all of this?
I mean, he just looks like a 40-year-old quarterback coming off of an Achilles tear. I mean, that's exactly what it looks like. He can't move and maneuver as well as he used to. I mean, that obviously has something to do with his old age, but the Achilles, as I mentioned, it's a lot of static. Simple drop back, 3-step drop. If the first read isn't there, then he's holding the ball and then he's trying to scramble around, and then he short arms a lot of passes. Garrett Wilson saw 22 targets last week,
fewest
which was
yards, yards ever on 20 targets, right?
Yeah, I think the second fewest yards ever on 20 targets that we've seen recently.
Right.
It's great for fantasy, but from a real life perspective, I mean, not the greatest. He didn't do a ton with those 22 targets. But yeah, we're just seeing a lot of static offense and not many throws down the field. I think he has a very has a low ADOT. Low average depth of target, so it's not a good offense.
What would be the impact of Davante Adams on Garrett Wilson? Would we see Davante Adams be the short range run after the catch guy, and Garrett Wilson morph into the deep threat more as a number? Would he be the number 2? How would it work?
Yeah, he would probably be the number 2, which would maybe benefit him in fantasy. He won't have as much attention. He won't face the number 1 corners, because if you look over the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season, he's had a pretty brutal cornerback schedule. The defenses he played against, they've been pretty stout defenses against wide receivers. So if you bring in a guy like Davante Adams, that'll take a lot of attention away from him, and he can be able to roam a little bit more freely, provided that the Jets make some offensive adjustments and get a little bit more dynamic.
Yeah, there's definitely need to be various adjustments. It sounds like Woody Johnson would like to see all the adjustments at once and get a win or something crazy. Monday Night Football against the Buffalo Bills is the next showcase for them. We're going to discuss free agents, free agent acquisitions. I see our targets for us. I see some of you have questions out in the chat. We'll get to those as we get to the positions and kind of run through them. So we'll run through some of these things and give our takes. And then if you have thoughts, go ahead and put them in the chat. If you have other comments or other questions, go ahead and get them in there and we'll get to them, because that's what it's all about. Your questions, people. Love those. So let's start at the quarterback position. Ike, and by the way, you can follow Ike just like right underneath his name. Just underscore Ike 09. And I recommend you do that on the X. And again, catch his podcast, Off the Line Fantasy Football Podcast with Eugene O'Manyhu. Great stuff that they do and have done for quite some time now. And Scampers has a view here. Of course he does. Stay operating downfield with Wilson. I think I'm kind of wide open to anything, but it just seems like Aaron Rodgers has his favorites. And, does Alan Lazard go away? I mean, he seems to have a lot of trust in Alan Lazard right now. I don't know. It just seems odd. I wish they would run the ball more. He talked about Breece Hall being a great receiver all summer long, and now they're not using him that way. Braylon Allen looks like the better runner. I wish they'd give Breece Hall a little more run so he could demonstrate that that's not the case. But
exactly, yeah.
Right? I mean, it looks like it, but it's such a small sample size you can't get into it. So let's dive into the quarterback position. So I argued going into the season that I was all in on Malik Neighbors because Daniel Jones isn't as horrible as everyone said. Turns out Daniel Jones is slightly less horrible than everybody said. Is that due to Malik Neighbors and Wan'Dale Robinson's emergence? Is this just a case of all the pieces coming together? And do you care? Is Daniel Jones now a viable play? We're talking about a guy who's been in the top 15 in 4 times so far this year, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, 3 out of the last 4 weeks, he's been a QB1. He was a QB1 last week. And I think one thing we'll start seeing moving forward is him running the ball a little bit more, because against Seattle, he had a season-high 11 rush attempts. And that was against a tough Seattle run defense. This week, he gets Cincinnati. Cincinnati, they've been very susceptible to giving up a lot of fantasy points to quarterbacks. But I talked about it on my waiver show that I did for on the DD channel. Daniel Jones has a very favorable schedule, for the rest of the season. A lot of green in the schedule, a lot of good matchups in the schedule. So I definitely like Daniel Jones, but in terms of whether it's Malik Neighbors and Wanda Robinson, that definitely helps for sure. I think he just had a QB1 week without Malik Neighbors,
Right.
because he ran the ball a lot.
Well, Darius Slayton decided he was Malik Neighbors.
Darius Slayton decided, to
talk
do
about
his best his best Malik Neighbors impression. But it seems like every time Darius Slayton is asked to play a significant role,
right,
he plays kind of well. He plays pretty well.
Hey,
But
Giants, trade high.
yeah. But yeah, so I think, and also you have to factor in that he hasn't been turning the ball over that much either.
Correct.
He's been protecting the football. So couple all these factors together, I think he's definitely a better than a streaming option moving forward.
So it's worth getting him on your roster. Is it worth 10% or slightly less of your fab budget? Do you think to secure a service?
I typically don't like spending a lot on quarterbacks, but I think maybe 5 to 10%, depending on your league size.
I think
but I typically don't like to spend a lot of quarterbacks because quarterbacks can emerge and they could be matchup based from a week to week basis. But Daniel Jones, I mean, he could be around for the rest of the season. So I can make an exception with him in some cases.
Yeah, I'm with you there. You mentioned some of those guys that are maybe free square quarterbacks. Drake May looks like he'll move into the starting lineup. Derek Carr is going to miss multiple games. And it sounds like Spencer Rattler is going to get the call. Let's just limit it to Superflex because I think that's the only place you would possibly have interest. If you have interest, how much is it in those two?
Spencer is so we sure it's Spencer Rattler, not the
that's the NFL Network reporting is it's going to be Rattler over Jake Haener. That they like what they've seen of him. It was Haener on short notice, but it'll be Rattler over the long haul. We'll find out. But
they do have a week to prepare, so I think Rattler would make sense because they had been talking him up a lot in the preseason, so that would make sense. But if in Superflex leagues you look at the quarterbacks, you don't see anybody available,
right?
So if there's a starting quarterback that's going to be a new starting quarterback for the week, you spend a lot of fab on those are the positions you spend on in Superflex leagues. But it's your traditional one quarterback leagues, I'm not a fan of spending a lot on quarterbacks, but Superflex for sure because every team has multiple quarterbacks, at least 3 quarterbacks. Most teams have. So if you have an opportunity to add another quarterback, especially if you have an injury to Anthony Richardson and another owner got Joe Flacco, out from under your nose. Yeah, I would spend up for Drake May and Spencer Rattler.
What do we think about Bo Nix right now?
He's exceeding expectations. I think, especially the last couple of games. He's had some pretty good showings. So I'm and with rookie quarterbacks, it takes a little bit of time for them to kind of gain some traction. But once they start figuring things out, the game slows down for them. They're less instinctive and they're able to make the right reads. Bo Nix could have had an even bigger game if Troy Franklin comes down with that touchdown in the end zone. I think in the third quarter. So I think he may be on the way to starting to put some of this together.
Yeah, I think so too. And I love the little interaction on the sidelines with him, Sean Payton, a little fiery exchange. God, I love that. Like, I know people read a lot into that sometimes. I read into it kind of like what it looked like. Hey, Michael, we're probably not going to do lineup questions too much here today in a one quarterback league this week, though. I'm probably, I think Scamper said in the chat, you're playing whoever against Carolina pretty much. I'd probably see if I couldn't cash in on that Kirk Cousins run going against the Panthers after
fade the Panthers until further notice.
Right. So I'm here Saturday for your lineup question, sir. So we're running into the running backs. This is an interesting one. We'll start out the running back section with by the way, I think he probably returns this week, Anthony Richardson. Just where are you at on him, Ike, in terms of playing him? So I feel like I invested so much time and energy into telling everyone to play him, draft him, and play him that I have to do my penance and keep playing him. But I also told people to have a really good, like a strong backup, like a Kirk Cousins or, to back a really solid play. What are you doing with Anthony Richardson in the leagues where you've invested in him?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. Like I should, I like his upside from a rushing standpoint, but he hasn't been doing much of that, right? I think his biggest calling card is rushing the ball, and his completion percentage is bad. Even on a week to week basis, you have to play him. I mean, you have to
I
play
do.
him. Um, but he's got the Titans this week. The Titans are a really tough matchup for quarterbacks.
Right.
And so this may be a challenge, and you could look to a streaming option like Daniel Jones
Sure.
for a replacement, especially if you're not sure about his hip and if he's going to run the ball a lot at all. And
Sure.
so
This is me filling out the permission slip as I often do. You can start whoever you need to. I'm going to keep starting Richardson mostly for the upside. There may be occasions where I go to another player if I don't feel comfortable with Richardson's health, if I'm really down on the matchup. But I will say he got off to a really encouraging start against a tough Steelers defense, and I was pretty enthusiastic. Wish he could have stayed in that game, but he did
yeah,
not. And Michael meant that should he
we were
bid on
robbed.
Cousins? Yes, we were robbed. He should have bid on. Yeah, you should bid on Cousins if you have Geno. I mean, I would want to field 2 quarterbacks in most leagues, assuming you have the roster space. Absolutely, Kirk Cousins should be rostered right now. He seems to be coming into his own a little better than one very Aaron Rodgers. I want to know how Taysom Hill factors in now for the Chiefs. We're going to talk about another Chiefs running back. We're going to talk about Kendrick Miller. So let's bundle this all up in one piece here. Is Miller worth a speculative play? You look at Alvin Kamara, like. They've been using the heck out of him, older player. I know the coach doesn't like Kendrick Miller. There's like the balance here seems tough. What do you think of him?
Well, you mentioned that's a good point that you made. You said that the coach doesn't like him. He did say some positive things about him last week. He said he did have like a good day of practice, a good couple of days of practice. So that was a shock to everybody because apparently apparently Kendrick Miller is the bane of Dennis Allen's existence. The way that he talks about him, but he's worth a speculative ad because Jamal Williams has given you nothing behind Alvin Kamara, and so that running game needs some juice. And I think Kendrick Miller can provide it. Now, granted, I think he's still not 100%. He was inactive for the Monday night game. But once he gets healthy, once he gets active, I mean, he's a 3rd-round pick. You saw some juice last year when he ran the ball pretty well at the end of the season. So I think that offense would stand to benefit with his presence in there.
See more questions coming in. We're going to run through some more of our guys here at running back. I did see one, though, that I wanted to get to because I think he's not on our list, and I don't know that he should be, right? Jerry McNichols in Washington showed up the last couple of weeks, but there have been some issues in Arizona for sure after Austin Eckler went out. He came up big. Is he a player that you would be interested in rostering right now, assuming Brian Robinson Jr. and Eckler are both healthy?
Very, very deep leagues, but none of your traditional leagues, because they're both pretty healthy. I didn't see anything about Brian Robinson re-aggravating an injury. Austin Eckler is fully back from his concussion, so I think very, very deep leagues, but you're not targeting him on this waiver run, especially in your 10, 12, even 14 team leagues. I don't think you're really targeting him.
Talking to Ike and Dukeway from DD Fantasy Football and the Off the Line Fantasy Football Podcast. Should be looking for all those things. It's at Off the Line FF on X. Is that correct, Ike?
Yeah, that's correct. Yep.
And Destination Debbie at Destination Debbie is still the Twitter handle there. So let's just run through some of these other running backs because I think there's some interesting names on the list. Tyrone Tracy coming off a big game for the New York Giants must be rostered, correct?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, if he's somehow, because in leagues that you and I are in, he's not available. But if he's still available anywhere, like he should be a priority. 25, 30, 25, 30, 40%.
That's so cheap.
A lot. Yeah, a lot of your budget. I'm probably being very conservative there, but like you should spend a lot of fab to acquire Tyrone Tracy because yes, Devin Singletary only missed it. He missed the game in week 5 due to the groin injury. He may be back next week. He may not be. But even if he is back, I think Tyrone Tracy earned himself onto the field. He earned himself a role, and he may make that backfield a timeshare.
Yeah, I think Singletary is like his superpower is being super serviceable, right? Like, but like the high end isn't there. Maybe we see a little bit more of that with Tracy. What do you think of Tank Bigsby? Seems like I think last week was a little bit of an outlier in terms of the workload. He had like a 65% running back share of the carries. Seems like that's probably not going to be the norm, but still the role is there. And I think this is the Jaguars' desired outcome. I think they wanted to lighten Etienne's load.
Yeah, and plus, like this is the first week that he outsnapped Travis Etienne. Like this is the first week of the season that he has outsnapped him. So, I mean, as a rusher overall in the season, he's just been flat out better. I mean, he's He's got a better rush yards over expected per attempt. Like, he's actually the best in the NFL at that. He leads the NFL in yards per carry as well. He's third in PFF rush grade. And then in these same metrics, ETN is 18th in rush yards over expected, and then 27th in PFF grade. So it's like he's just been the better runner. The only thing with Tank Bigsby is that he's not getting the passing game usage, and that still belongs to ETN. ETN is still lapping him in routes run and targets out of the backfield. So that's the only thing that the only other box we need to check off with Tank Bigsby for the takeover to be complete. But we're still a ways away from that.
And I think we're probably both higher on the fab here. Are you up to? Will you go up to 50, or are you stay into the 30 range somewhere in there?
Yeah, running backs is where you spend. Backup running backs is where you spend, because if something happens to ETN where he misses an extended period of time, Tank Bigsby is going to be the proverbial league winner right now. So I don't know if he has standalone value yet. I mean, if he continues his efficiency on the ground, he could have some flex appeal for week to week if ETN's healthy. But yeah, he's a 50%er at least.
And how about Ty Chandler, Minnesota? We heard today Kevin O'Connell came out, the hip injury. Boy, what a play, by the way. Aaron Jones on the play that he looked like he was hurt on. That was a wide receiver level catch, right? I mean,
yes.
Went up over the top of the defender.
He's a really good receiver. Good receiver.
So what is Ty Chandler worth, and is Myles Gaskin a concern?
I wouldn't say Myles Gaskin is a concern, because he was just on the practice squad. He was just elevated before the game on Sunday in London. So I wouldn't call him a factor at all, because when Aaron Jones went out, Ty Chandler played over 80% of the snaps. So he's going to be the one that's going to get the workload. He's going to be the one that's getting the snaps and the opportunities. You saw it last year. Whenever he took over as a starting running back, he was basically a bell cow. He took the job from Alexander Madison and basically didn't look back. And so I mean, Ty Chandler, I mean, he's probably more rostered than Tank Bigsby and Tyrone Tracy. Because he was probably drafted in a lot more leagues than the other two. But I mean, he's around a 30%er. Now, granted, you may not even have to spend that much on him, because the Vikings have a bye week this week. So he may be flying under the radar, and you may not have to spend that much on him. So you can probably just add him for really, really cheap if he's still out there.
How much are you going to spend on Roschon Johnson's goal line job?
Not that much. It's 15? Not because DeAndre Swift got 21 carries, and he's been looking good, really good lately. But he's still worth a stash for sure. He's still worth an add.
The contingent upside stash, right? Like if something happens to Swift, like that never happens, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But you can definitely add him for 5-10% ish range.
Yeah, I think I'd go up to 15 maybe. Depending on if I've spent wisely up to this point, and I have. Because I always do. I'm no Mike Dempsey. And as we're setting these prices out, I've got to say, my radio co-host, you can hear us on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio every damn day except today. So I do think that that contingent upside role is good. Is Blake Corum now? Are you now convinced that Blake Corum is next man up after he got the work ahead of Rivers finally in a game?
Yeah,
or
finally.
is it just hard to figure out?
Yeah, this is the first week that he got any kind of offensive snaps, meaningful offensive snaps, because I know he played a little bit in garbage time against the Cardinals, but I mean, it's about time.
He had 8 snaps up to this game and had 11 in this game and got a fair amount of work on the snap.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're starting to see some things in him, and he's another one that's on bye this week, right? He's going to fly under the radar. You can just add him for cheap.
Jalen Wright's out of bye too. Is he somebody should be on rosters as well?
Oh, 100%. He should be rostered in every league, because you saw his explosiveness. I mean, he had 13 carries for 86 yards. He forced 4 missed tackles per touch, 4.6 yards after contact per attempt in week 5. So I think he can earn himself onto the field as well. I mean, with the Miami Dolphins backfield is just banged up, right? I mean, we had Devon Achane with a concussion. He's already been injured before. Raheem Mostert doesn't really look like himself. Jeff Wilson, we don't know, what his injury status is. So Jalen Wright's I think he's gonna be playing a lot more down the stretch. And he's one of those rookie running backs that, rookie running backs every single year, you see them turn up towards the end of the season and have a lot of production towards the end of the year. So He most certainly needs to be rostered in every league.
Yeah, Kyram, investor here, Michael wants to know if he should pick up Corum. Like, I wouldn't wait around if you have roster. If you have roster needs this week, hold off. I don't think, if nobody's picked him up to this point and they have to buy, out of sight, out of mind. But if you don't have a need, go ahead and grab him, right?
Yeah, you should definitely pick him up because Kyron Williams is averaging 19 carries a game. I don't know how sustainable that is, because he's been banged up before in his career, right? The last 2 years he's been hurt. So not saying that's going to happen again, but 19 carries is a lot for a running back of his size and his stature. So definitely worth a stash.
Let's get into roster management question here while we have a brief moment. Should Daniel Bai wants to know, should I trade Garrett Wilson and Aaron Jones for Derrick Henry and Mike Evans?
Do it yesterday.
Right, for sure.
Absolutely do that. Yeah, because Mike Evans is
Evans is a boss, man.
Mike Evans is forever. I'll never have anything bad to say about Mike Evans. And then Derrick Henry, yes, he had a little bit of a kind of like a set a subpar game. He still scored a touchdown. I think he scored a touchdown in every single game this year. And they were on a more pass heavy game script, but more often than not, they're going to be running the ball a lot more.
If someone's offered you this trade, you should have already accepted it. So go do that right now, and we'll wait for you. So we've gone through the running backs, and the wide receiver setup is next. And so we had a question here. By the way, let's get this running back question out of the way first. What do we do with Jerome Ford? So last week in my in and out column, I thought it was pretty easy in on Jerome Ford going against that Washington Commanders defense. It's laid down for pretty much everybody. I underestimated how bad Cleveland's offense can be. At some point, we're going to have Nick Chubb back. Foreman, so Foreman only ate into it this week. He hadn't been eating into it much for 2 weeks, and the week before that he was. So this seems like really tough. Is he droppable in a 10-man league?
10 men, yeah, I would consider dropping him in a 10-man. You just can't figure out that backfield, right? 1 week he's getting the majority of the snaps, the next week he plays 4 snaps or 5 snaps or gets 5 carries. So you just can't figure it out. That offense is putrid. The offensive line can't block. Deshaun Watson is arguably the worst quarterback in the league, especially on an EPA per dropback standpoint. So you don't know what's going to happen with that offense, that backfield. Even with Nick Chubb coming back, I would be fading that entire offense, to be honest. I don't want anything to do with that offense. I know Amari Cooper has a lot of underlying metrics that support that he could potentially break out later on in the season, but
especially with the Chiefs.
Yeah.
Unless Darius Slayton goes there. Or unless Juju comes on. By the way, if you're just tuning in, I'm Bob Harris. This is footballguys.com is the website. This is the Audible YouTube channel. Yes, Cecil and Sig are not here right now. They'll be around. Don't worry about it. Ike and Duke is with me from DD Fantasy Football and the Off the Line Fantasy Football Podcast with Eugene O'Menihue. You should check that out. All that's on Twitter. You can find it at Ike's handle at @Ike09. You can find me at Football Diehard. You can find all my work at Football Guys. Listen to the daily update podcast, 10 minutes every morning to give you all the news you need to know, kind of set the plate, get your things on point, and kind of keep you up to date on everything. You can also hear me on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 10 to midnight, Saturday night, simulcast on the Fantasy Channel and the NFL Radio Channel from 8 to 11 Sunday on the pregame show with Jeff Mans. From 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. And here every Tuesday at 7 p.m. with a friend on the hot seat. Ike is it today. We have great guests every week, though, so please tune in for that. My Ask Me Anything live streams are Saturday at 11 a.m. So wide receivers were up next, and we had a question about the wide receivers, and Royal Slade can jump in here, too. I know he's watching. Who is your favorite New England wide receiver, and why is it Jalen Polk?
Yeah, that was going to be my favorite. Speaking of news, we got news that Drake May is going to start.
Right.
Now, it's not against the best opponent because the Texans defense is going to make it really difficult on a rookie quarterback, because if you look back to week 2 against against Chicago, they pressured Caleb Williams on 48% of his dropbacks. So Drake May is in for quite a treat this Sunday. But I think with the rookie to rookie connection, I like Jalen Polk. Last week he played the most snaps. The next closest, so he played 60 snaps last week, and the next closest wide receiver was 40 snaps. Ran the most routes, had 6 targets. He had that near touchdown I think it should have been a touchdown, even though his heel hit out of bounds, but his toe was inbounds. I think they need to change that rule at some point. Off-season rule change. Hopefully they implement that. But I think Jalen Polk has the highest upside remaining in that receiving room.
Maybe they'll change that after they start enforcing the hip thrust tackle. I don't know. I'm just saying. Just
Right.
I have guys on my bench right now dying to get back into playing, said Joe Mixon. We had a couple of receiver related questions here. We have another running back related question. Let's get to that. What do we think about the Chargers backfield? Feels like Dobbins will fade, but does Gus take that work away, or they go right to Vidal? I'm just going to tell you. I talked to a lot of people who cover the Chargers on a daily basis. Nobody thinks much of Kamani Vidal. They just don't.
Mm-hmm.
Like I talked to Joe Reedy from the Associated Press. This was like in August. I said, okay, so let's talk about the backfield. And we ran through the top pieces and basically, I said, but what about Vidal? Because he didn't mention it. He goes, yeah, special teams guy. Well, he hasn't even been that so far. He hasn't been active. Hassan Haskins is running ahead of him. Has been the active player. So I don't know. Maybe it gets to there. I don't think it's anything like in a regular league that a regular redraft league that I'm going to be worried about. Hold on to him in Dynasty, but it's going to be a rough run. But what do you think about the Dobbins? Do you feel like a fade's coming, or is this finally his time to put it all together and stay on the field?
I think the latter. I think it's his time. And plus he had a bye. He had an early bye. He had some time to kind of get his legs back under him. After a crazy workload for the first month. Gus Edwards is basically being phased out of that offense, right? Yeah. He only had 6 carries the last game. He's not playing much. He's not giving you anything on third downs. He's not even getting goal line carries. And the Chargers aren't even good enough to even get near the goal line. And so I think J.K. Dobbins is the only running back you want in that backfield.
I would agree with that right now. In a super flex, by the way, we missed this one. Would you rather hold Flacco or get Dre May for your third quarterback? Yeah, it's not that hard.
I would probably get Drake May as my third.
Unless Richardson is one of the first two.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, if the Richardson hip injury lingers, definitely worth keeping Flacco because we've seen right. we have a large enough sample size to know that anytime Joe Flacco is getting spot duty with an offense, I mean, they're going to be passing the ball at a high clip. I think their pass rate over expected is going to be really, really high. I mean, last year at Cleveland, they had the number 1 pass rate over expected. So then their pace was fast. They're going to probably do the same
highest
thing.
Rated passer in the NFL right now. While Anthony Richardson is the lowest. So as we roll into the wide receivers, the question here from Killa KM is should he drop Wicks? Dante.
No. Don't do that. Don't do that. That's crazy talk. Don't do that. You got to hold him. He had a 28% target share.
Right. It was like it didn't pan out. Like I was big on him this week. I started him in every opportunity I had. Expected more against this Rams matchup. Tucker Kraft had different ideas, people.
We can't overreact after one game. It's just one game. He's still a baller. We have a large enough sample size to know that he's actually really, really good when he plays a lot of snaps. This was just a bad game. No need to rage drop him off of one bad game.
That's for sure, right? So it's all right. Thoughts on Tracy for the Giants here? We loved Tyrone Tracy. I mean, like when you drop Wicks, if you only could have one guy on your roster, Wicks or Tracy, who is it?
Ooh, man, just between those two, I'd probably. Oh man, that's tough.
I mean, it probably depends on your needs, right? Like why running back's always going to be the position of more need. I think Wicks might give you a little something every week, be a guy that can help you avoid a 0 during the bye weeks or whatever, like maybe come in and get a catch or 2 or a target or 2. Tracy needs some things to happen. Even if I think they're going to happen, they haven't yet.
Yeah, I struggle with this one because I do like Tracy for the long term because I think his performance against the Seahawks I think he's earned his way onto the field. And so there may be a matter of time before he could potentially take over that backfield. I mean, that is a possibility. And you like to have running backs, especially rookie running backs, that have some explosiveness, that have some juice, right? And then, Christian Watson may be back later on in the season. You don't know what those routes are going to do. Romeo Dobbs, I think he's going to be back. I think
who knows? Those Luke Musgrave shares might be. No, they probably.
There's a lot of competition for targets in Green Bay, even though Dontavian Wicks is awesome in his own right. But I would probably lean Tyrone Tracy here I mean, that's just me. That's just my opinion.
Opinion, position of scarcity, right? That's the determining. That's the hair splitter for me. Let's run through these wide receivers before we get to some more questions. Juju Smith-Schuster, what's he worth to you?
Well, he's only less than 10% rostered, so I think since Rashee Rice is now out for the season, 25% at least fab on him. Like you need to be aggressive on the waiver wire to go to acquire him. I don't think they're going to make any trades at the trade deadline because I think since Juju Smith-Schuster, I mean they're familiar with him. Like he knows the offense, and that's kind of the thesis behind why he had a pretty good game. The Saints had a lot of different coverage, different matchups, but I think Juju in the short intermediate areas of the field really benefited, and that's where he went to work.
Look just like Rashee Rice.
Just like Rashee Rice. And so
I don't know how sustainable that is, but it's worth a little something to me. I wouldn't overspend. I'm with Ike. I wouldn't overspend. I also wouldn't overspend on Jalen Tolbert, but I'd spend a little, like maybe 5% to 10% on Jalen Tolbert in Dallas. What about you?
Well, since the Cowboys can't run the ball worth a damn. I mean, now granted, their run game was a little bit better on Sunday night against the Steelers, but they're the worst rushing team in the league still, right? And they're going to be passing the ball a lot. Brandon Cook's still out for at least the next 3 games. He's a number 2 target in Dallas, right? He's a number 2 wide receiver. He had 10 targets on Sunday night, and his next matchup against the Lions, I mean, the Lions, they give the second most fantasy points to wide receivers, so they are a pass funnel. And that's another team you can't run on. You can't really run on the Lions. And the Cowboys are probably the worst rushing team in the league. So he's going to have some pretty good games.
So you're saying that Ezekiel Elliott turnaround isn't coming?
No, it's not. I mean, if you look at him, they've been kind of scaling back his snaps and his opportunities over the last several games. And Rico Dowdle has taken over that backfield.
Yep, for sure. All right, so some other receivers. So what are we doing with Jordan Whittington, right? Like he seems to be the guy that's kind of established himself as a primary piece not named Colby Parkinson, if there's a primary piece in the Rams receiving core. But we're going to get probably Cooper Kupp back week 7. Puka Nacua is getting close to coming back. Is Whittington worth anything if you're out there floating around? He's not playing this week, so it doesn't have to be an in-the-moment move. Does he have long-term value?
It's hard to say because like you said, we'll have one of Puka or Cooper Kupp back after the bye, right? So that just kind of remains to be seen, like how they want to deploy this receiver room. I think he has earned some more opportunity in the offense, along with Tutu Atwell. Tutu Atwell is another one that whenever he's called upon, I mean he ends up playing pretty well. So I wouldn't go crazy over Jordan Whittington. I mean, 12-team league.
I feel like he plays the role.
I wouldn't even look his way.
Like Tutu Atwell is a different kind of piece. The Sesame Street theory of fantasy football. One of these things is not like the other. Tutu Atwell, like Whittington, it kind of plays the role similar to what Kupp plays when he's there, and runs some of the same routes that Nacua does too. So I just feel like probably that's going to box him out, and maybe Atwell's the piece of interest. How much interest should we have in Darius Slayton as the starter opposite Malik Neighbors? We got Wandale in the slot. Does he have some value?
Well, I mean, when Malik Neighbors comes back, we know that he's going to be getting the majority of the targets. I don't know what his opportunity. Majority. Yeah. So when Neighbors comes back, it's usually 2 guys, right? That Giants passing attack goes through. It's Wandale Robinson and it's Malik Neighbors. So there's not going to be that much opportunity for Darius Slayton. So whenever one of those guys is out, Darius Slayton will be more viable.
So like Mr. Nice Guy has here, Whittington is like a handcuff for Kupp and Puka. Same thing for Slayton, right? He's the handcuff for Malik Neighbors. Are we going to get to the point where we're handcuffing these super high end wide receivers, or is that too risky a business?
If you have like 10 man benches, sure, why not?
And everyone should have very deep benches.
Yeah.
If I was in charge of every league, they would be way bigger. We talked a little bit about Jalen Polk. What about Josh Downs? I feel like he should already be rostered in most leagues. Is there any reason not to have him on a roster? Concerns for Anthony Richardson or anything like that? I'm with you.
No concerns whatsoever. I think he's going to get targeted no matter what. I mean, this season he's been targeted on over 30% of his routes. He just had 12 targets against the Jags with Joe Flacco throwing him the ball. Even last year, if you go back to last year when Gardner Minshew was throwing him the ball and Anthony Richardson with a small sample, he was getting targeted at a high clip as well. So Josh Downs is a baller. I think he will be just fine. If he's still available, he'd be super. You need to be super aggressive on him because at the very least he'll give you a nice safe floor. He can give you some boom weeks as well. So Josh Downs is for sure a priority if he's available somehow, some way.
Marvin Harrison has been quite interesting this year, and then there's Michael Wilson who has 2 fewer targets. Is there any reason he should not be on rosters?
Yeah, I mean he should definitely be on. He's a number 2 in Arizona. Plays 72% of the snaps. He's only around 25% rostered right now in most leagues. He just had a big game against the 49ers, which is a pretty tough opponent, tough-ish opponent. They ranked 13th against wide receivers in fantasy, so 5 for 78. So yeah, I think you should definitely roster Michael Wilson in many leagues because, aside from Marvin Harrison and Trey McBride, I mean, we haven't really seen much from Greg Dortch. Greg Dortch, he had a good start to the season, but he's just kind of fallen by the wayside since then. So it's Michael Wilson that's emerging. So you should definitely add him.
Yeah. Juwan Jennings, third and Juwan. Great blocker. They like him an awful lot there. Is he droppable? It does look like I kind of expected a breakout against the Cardinals. I saw the breakout against the Cardinals. Debo and Kittle are still going to be ahead of him. But Jennings, does he have any value, or is he worth a hold in a deep enough league?
In deep leagues, I think by and large, I think he is a droppable drop candidate because I think his Linsanity run is over, unfortunately. I like him as a player, but I think now Ayuk is back. Ayuk is starting to get his legs under him. Kittle's healthy. They're running the ball well. Jordan Mason, Debo is working his way back from the calf injury. So once all those pieces are kind of back, so there's not really much room for Juwan Jennings to really get any spin. So
another handcuff, deeper rosters, people. That's the answer to all the questions.
Exactly.
Is Keenan Allen just a matchup starter moving forward?
You can start him this week against Jacksonville. I think that Bears passing attack may have a coming out party. Now, granted, they kind of have a coming out party last week against Carolina, but I think Jacksonville gets torched by everybody. So if he doesn't happen for him this week, you can drop him. I think he's droppable as well. Keenan Allen. I mean, I can't believe I'm saying a guy who caught 100 passes for over 1,200 yards just last year, is droppable. And look, man, they're going to be going into the bye week in week 7. So I
set the chat on fire last week, telling everyone to drop Mark Andrews. So I'm sure that they're ready for us.
I said the same thing.
We're heartless. We're heartless. Trade Ford for Tank Dell. If I could, I would do that in a fast second.
Yeah, I would. Yeah.
Right, Dell, we know Nico Collins seems week to week now. It went from day to day to week. But the big thing is, Tank Dell, the reason he's been struggling is the target share has not been there. He's been under 15% every game but one that he's played, and he needs to get back up in that 20% share, and he'd be just fine. And we can remember how it worked last year when somebody was hurt in Houston. Other people jumped up to the forefront, including Tank Dell. So yeah, I would be making this trade.
And he's playing a lot, right? He's on the field running routes, so it's only a matter of time that his fortunes begin to turn around.
All right, let's look at a couple of tight ends that we might or might not like. Ty Conklin. Is he a Tyler Conklin for the Jets? Is he a mirage? Was that a one-game, one-off situation, or is he someone you can trust?
I mean, it would seem like he'd be somebody that we can trust, given how terrible and how poor the landscape of the tight end position is. If you don't have, a Brock Bowers, if you don't have a George Kittle, if you don't have, a Tucker Kraft, you don't have any of these guys that kind of went off or has been going off the last couple of weeks, you're kind of screwed at that position. But in any event, I mean, he ran the most routes at tight end for the Jets this past week. But for the first time this season, this is like PFF snap data. For the first time this season, he failed to play 90% of the snaps this week. And he only ran so many routes because the Jets were trailing by 3 touchdowns. Yeah. They were getting blown out. So more often than not, he's not going to really be running that many routes. So I kind of worry about that from a long-term perspective. So I would, if you need a streaming option maybe he's okay. He's all right, but I wouldn't be like tripping over myself to go get him.
Yeah, I think this is where I'm at as well. I think there's a more appealing option waiting for us in Tampa Bay.
Yeah, Cade Otton. Yeah, I mean, for sure. Like his role is stable, right? In that Tampa Bay passing attack, it's stable. I mean, his target rate each of the last 3 games been pretty decent, around the 16-17% range. He's around 10 PPR points per game over the last 3 games. And so it's a pretty stable role. I mean, he's not gonna hurt you. Yeah, he's not gonna hurt you. So if you put him in your lineup, you at least know you're gonna get some points there.
Yeah, Mark Andrews is on life support. Like if you didn't take my advice and release him last week, like I put some context to it. If only if you don't have room, if he's keeping you from adding a player that could give you instant value and you need in your lineup, he's droppable. If you have room on your roster, I'm willing to stick around. I invested enough that I would like to see him turn back into Mark Andrews. I don't think he is. And after this game, I think I might try to trade him because he at least got a little action. And that kind of brings up another question here that we have. Am I crazy for looking to pick up Charlie Kolar as a deep stash in deeper leagues? If this was a dynasty, I would say 100% not crazy. What do we think in redraft?
Probably not redraft. I mean, I think this is a one kind of like an outlier. I don't think you want any Ravens tight end, to be honest, even Isaiah Likely, because they're just not getting that much opportunity as a unit, right? I mean, because Lamar Jackson, he passed the ball a lot last week. The Bengals kind of forced that with that shootout that happened, but you're not gonna see that much pass volume on a week-to-week basis from the Ravens. So I wouldn't look to get him in any shallower leagues like a 12-team, 10-team league in redraft. I think that's just kind of like a one-off.
Boy, there's one other tight end on the list. Let's get to that and then address some of these comments. There's some other comments that are coming in. Jatavian Sanders. Is there any hope for any Carolina Panther tight end ever? I'm going to go back and say Wesley Walls. No, Greg Olsen. Slander won't stand here, but it's been a while since there's been a viable tight end.
I don't know about that one. I know he ran the second most routes on the team last week and tripled the next closest tight end. Now that was because the usual snap leader Tommy Tremble left with a concussion. So that remains to be seen how he recovers from that. Usually how we've seen concussions, be handled this year, usually the player misses a game, right?
Unless they're Josh Allen, then they just
unless they're Josh Allen, they go right back out there. Just give him some smelling salt, and boom, he's right out there.
It's all right. Don't worry, it's his ankle.
If we see Jatavian Sanders with a full complement of snaps, I want to see what he does with that before I say that yay or nay to that.
I'm with you there. So what are we doing with we've got the off week to think about it. What are we doing with these assets, the receiving assets in Miami? I mean, I felt like I think you have to play Tyreek Hill. If you have him, I almost feel obligated to. I don't feel the same way about Waddle.
Yeah, I'm more so playing Hill over Waddle because I think with this iteration of the Miami Dolphins offense, just until Tua gets back, you can only really start one of those receivers, and the one that you have to start is Tyreek Hill. I think he still must start, even in this state of the Dolphins offense.
I would agree. Stuck with Dalton Kincaid all year. Is it time to move Cade Otton ahead of him?
Not quite. I mean, I think Buffalo, they're still struggling at wide receiver, and you don't really have much. So I think it could be a lot worse than Dalton.
Struggling at wide receiver, I feel like this Keon Coleman slander is like just a strike right at my heart.
Yeah, that one catch for 49 yards was a great play, but that was his only contribution to the game.
His only target too, wasn't it?
His only target, yeah. I mean, I think that's the third game where he's had just one target.
All right. So, I'll stop now. All right. Am I okay? What else? We got some other comments here. I think that was all the tight ends we had on our list. And by the way, if you aren't familiar with Ike, you can get familiar with him. The Off the Line Fantasy Football Podcast is fantastic. He and his co-host Eugene O'Menahue they do great stuff there for DD Fantasy Football. You should check them out at Destination Devi. The Off the Line Podcast is just Off the Line FF.
Yes, sir.
Off the Line FF Ike, of course, at _Ike09. So check everything out. I really appreciate you coming on and enduring the brutal hot seat, man. And we'll go through a few questions and comments. We got about 10 more minutes, everybody. So if you have any other questions or issues you want to bring up, we'll kick them around for you. And here is one. Got Goff and Purdy. Do I drop one for Cousins? He also has Amon-Ra St. Brown and Mooney on the roster.
Just kind of depends on the league format, but I wouldn't. Goff just went 18 for 18. He's cooking right now. I would kind of hold. I would hold these two quarterbacks.
Yeah, I think like what do you think about Purdy? Right, just in general, right? Like this week wasn't his greatest game, but it wasn't horrible. I think he's like underestimated.
He is. He is very underrated. I've been, I've criticized Purdy in the past as not being that good. I mean, I compared him to Jimmy Garoppolo a couple of years ago, where they had basically the almost identical, CPOE and EPA per drop back. Like they were very similar because of the offense they were in. But it seems like Purdy's getting better every single week and every single year since then. So he throws the ball a lot down the field. I think that
downfield more this year, right? Is that
a lot? Yeah, he's taking a lot of downfield shots.
Is that just because Christian McCaffrey isn't there? Do you think
that could partly be because that could be partly the reason? Because they're not as dynamic in the. Well, I mean, Jordan Mason's done a pretty good job running the ball, but I think for the most part, yeah, he's throwing the ball a lot more down the field.
All right, is this a defensive? We get saucy enough to talk defenses. Thoughts on dropping Denver versus LA Chargers to pick up Philly versus Cleveland? Like I'm always looking to pick on the quarterback. It's hard for us, Andrew, to get into defenses too deep without all the intricacies of the scoring system. So I kind of keep it at basic level. Like you can chime in if you want. But my basic look is it's like the Serengeti approach. I want to prey on the weak. Who is the quarterback? And do I have disruptive playmakers on that defense? That's kind of the bars for me if I'm looking to stream defenses. Where are you at?
Yeah, I mean, Cleveland's a good option, right? Because Philly's a good option against Cleveland because Deshaun Watson is probably the worst quarterback in the league. So you want to look at like the bottom 5 quarterbacks and just target those defenses against those quarterbacks. That's usually my general rule of thumb whenever I'm looking at streaming defenses if they're not already rostered.
Yep, I think that is a reasonable approach. Would you rather have Mark Andrews or Likely going forward?
Probably
not neither.
Yeah, if it were up to me, it would be neither, but I would probably go Likely.
Would we have Drake May over Andy Dalton or Levis as our third quarterback in a super flex league?
Absolutely Drake May because of his potential rushing upside. He's going to be running for his life, and he's going to be getting some rushing yards. And if you think back to his time in North Carolina, he rushed the ball at a pretty efficient clip.
This is the thing that everyone needs to realize, what Dame Overboard is saying here. Kyle Shanahan has been waiting for the guy that's a mini Shanahan in the huddle, and he has him now, right? The guy who runs the offense the way Shanahan wants it run. And he saw him as a rookie. He knew he was going to be the starter way before the rest of us knew. And so did Mike Shanahan, by the way. So yes, I 100% correct, Dame. That is totally true. Goff's best games are still ahead. Purdy plays for the NFC Championship winner. I'd hold both. Concur. Should I drop Fields for Cousins? So this is an interesting one. Like I like Fields' upside. He doesn't always live up to it. He's kind of like I like to torture myself with Anthony Richardson. The Commodity Code guys drive me crazy. And in every league where I did not draft Jaden Daniels, and yes, I'm angry that it wasn't every single league. I'm mad at my Anthony Richardson and Kyler Murray shares. But but let's say Justin Fields was a guy maybe you draft. I picked him up as like a last pick in a lot of drafts when it started seeming like things were happening. It seems like they're going the other way now. I don't know if it's a drum beat yet, but you hear today Wilson's practicing. I mean, it's just starting to come on. He's not going to start this week, it doesn't look like. But how confident are you in Justin Fields' job security?
I think he has an opportunity to kind of hold off Russell Wilson this week against the Raiders. I think he has that opportunity ahead of him. But I'm growing less and less confident each week because they've lost the last 2 games and he's turned the ball over quite a bit in those last 2 games. So yeah, it's getting kind of dicey. I'd say it's getting kind of dicey for Justin Fields in his job security.
I think so too. Let's see what we got here. I think Richardson is going to be on the bench if he's good. No, if Richardson's good, if Richardson's cleared, he's going to be back in the mix. They're not.
They did say that he's the starting quarterback if he's
For
healthy,
sure.
fully healthy. Now, emphasis on fully though, because he may not be fully healthy this week, right?
Right.
Joe Flacco may get another start this week.
They have given themselves some wiggle room, and that's very smart of them to do.
Yes.
But they're fully invested in Anthony Richardson. They know this is not like a short-term project. This is a long-term thing. And from a fantasy perspective, there are two things can be true. Anthony Richardson right now is not a great NFL quarterback. Also, he can still be a phenomenal fantasy quarterback. So,
Absolutely.
Keep that in mind as you're making your decisions. And we love the upside. Drop, take Dell or Braylon Allen to pick up Trey McBride to cover. How the hell are you picking up Trey McBride? What's going on here?
I would probably go Braylon Allen. You can't drop Tank Dell, especially with Nico Collins being out potentially multiple weeks with that hamstring injury, and Tank Dell I think he has a lot of upside to bounce back.
Yes, I think so. Should I start or wait on starting May right now, right away to Superflex? Other options I have are Love and Dalton.
Oh yeah, start Love. I'd go Love.
Love and Dalton.
He says other options are
Superflex.
Love and Dalton.
Oh, okay. So yeah, I mean, so if you were starting, what's your ranking these guys? It's Love, Dalton, and May, or not? You like May?
Yeah, love Dalton and May because we haven't seen anything from May yet. Although I anticipate him running a lot and getting a lot of rushing yards. So, but it's Love, Dalton, May.
We have not put your feet to the fire, Ike. Let's do it now. Sniper Mel wants to know, where's he going?
I think he'll be a Jet. He's going to the Jets.
Probably right.
Yeah.
Need wide receivers, have running backs. Trading Chuba and Ford for either Shakir and Leggett or Dubs and Dell. What wide receiver duo is better? I'd want better than either of them if I'm giving up Chuba Hubbard right now.
Yeah, you cannot trade Chuba Hubbard. You have to get a better haul back for Chuba Hubbard. Chuba Hubbard is a top 7 running back in fantasy. And we don't know. And Jonathan Brooks' practice window hasn't even been opened yet.
Right.
So you may get a couple more weeks of really, really good production out of Chuba Hubbard. So you can get a better return for him.
Yeah, I 100% agree. That is the correct answer. Rice is done for the season. Seems like it. Yes, he did. So the good news is the ACL wasn't damaged. So I think there's a little bit of vagueness and wiggle room. It could be like a 3-month on the early end.
No, they said he's out for the season.
He's out for the regular season.
Regular season.
Yeah, maybe a slight chance for the playoffs, but don't count on it.
Yeah,
and expect. Yeah, so if you need to release him, I think the news we got today makes him releasable in any redraft league. Richard Adams to the Bills would be nice. I don't know. Keon Coleman is pretty studly. I don't know if you want to dampen that fire.
I don't know if they can afford him though.
I think the Bills are probably like I had the list of teams. They were not on my list of teams that could afford him like outright, but they could do some things. Oh, it's Chubb, not Chuba. On that trade.
Chubb and Ford. Okay. Now, okay. Well, that kind of changes things.
Can I just not read, or was that just did he write it wrong? I feel stupid.
I think the second group, it had Dubs, and I can't remember who the other one was. But I did not like the first the first group of
Sorry, King Cards. So you would do this group.
Yeah, I mean, because you're selling the Browns. You're selling a bad offense, and you're getting something in return for a bad offense. So if you're able to do that, then I would probably be fine with anything I can get back from that.
This is horrible to the Titans.
No. He would not want to go there.
Keon could learn from the Taco Bell guy. I don't know. 49ers do have a ton of cap space and also not as much need for wide receivers. All right, everybody, that's it. Give us the rundown one more time. Where can everyone find you? What should they be looking for right now?
Yeah, it's just on Twitter. Find me on just at _IGO9. Find the podcast page Off the Line FF, and I'm with DD Fantasy Football, and you can follow that Twitter handle at Destination Devi. And please check out the DD Fantasy Football website. It just kind of relaunched over the last couple of months, and it's just great great tools that they have. Check out the podcast I do with Gene every week on Thursdays. Check out all the wonderful stuff that we have on the channel.
Absolutely. Thanks for everyone for coming. Just squeeze one in here. Yes, Garrett Wilson has attention. Yes, Tracy is probably the position of scarcity. So there we have it. I think we've done our work here. I'm Bob Harris. I'll be back here next Tuesday night at this time with another great guest. On Saturday, I'll be on the Audible channel for the Ask Me Anything live stream. We'll just talk lineup stuff and whatever news of the day is. You can catch me on the Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Radio at 10 to midnight every night but Tuesday. On Saturdays, I'm 8 to 11 on NFL Radio and the Fantasy Channel. It's a simulcast. It's a technological thing, kids. I don't understand it, but it works really good. And also on Sundays, you can get me on the pregame show with the great Jeff Mans. Otherwise, my Fantasy Notebook comes out Thursday at Football Guys. My Polarizing Players collab with Gary Davenport comes out on Friday. And my In and Out every Saturday. You're going to love that one. It's joyous and makes me very nervous when I watch games because I get a little edgy. Logic-based hot takes, people. That's what it's all about. And that's what we're all about here, right? All right. So Thanks everyone for coming, and we'll see you next time. Appreciate your time and your attention. It means a lot to us. Thank you.